you. And well, Patrick on Wednesday was talking a little bit about the potential for the growing conflict in Lebanon. But what's your thoughts on the situation?
Yeah, a lot of maneuvering going on, of course, with Saudi Arabia and Israel partnering with Washington to try and disarm Hezbollah and other resistance factions, not only Shia Muslim, but Christian, Sunni Muslim resistance factions in Lebanon that have historically, of course, supported Palestine and opposed the expansionism of Israel. So first of all, let's have a look at what's been going on more recently. I know Pat alluded to this on Wednesday. A strategy of surrender. Hezbollah condemns the Lebanese cabinet decision on disarmament, where basically they were saying that there should be a state monopoly on arms by the end of the year. But however, we're not putting any pressure on Israel to withdraw from the points that it continues to occupy in southern Lebanon. And of course, it continues, I think, more than 4,000 violations now of the alleged ceasefire that came into effect in November 2024. So this is quite interesting. This was a poll that was carried out by the Lebanese Consultative Center for Studies and Documentation, carried out between the 27th of July and the 4th of August, amongst 600 individuals from all different sects in Lebanon. And it came up with the results that the majority of Lebanese oppose Hezbollah disarmament. This is in more depth. Majority of the citizens opposed to disarmament of Hezbollah without guaranteed national defense strategy. 71.7% believe that the Lebanese armed forces or the army is not capable of confronting Israeli attacks alone, which is absolutely correct. 76% believe that diplomatic relations will not deter Israel. And 58% are against disarmament with no alternative strategy. They then raised the question of the threat from the Takfiri forces of the so-called new Syria president, Abu Muhammad al-Jolani, or Ahmed al-Shara, as he's known now in the West. So this was the result on the questions raised regarding the threat from Syria. 73% see events in Syria as an existential threat to Lebanon. 74% believe Syria threatens security and stability in Lebanon. 68% fear that they could pave the way for a war by armed groups in Syria against Lebanon. And of course, this is very much in line with what I've been talking about, the invasion of the north or the infiltration of the north of Lebanon by the Takfiri elements from inside Syria. Now, I just want to run this video. This was a video filmed on the 10th of August, so a few days ago now. There was a tragedy that hit the Lebanese armed forces. 6 soldiers died when Hezbollah had actually taken them to a Hezbollah arms depot for them to dismantle it. What is interesting is here you see the Lebanese flag and you see the Hezbollah resistance flag being flown alongside one another. What is very important for people to understand is that the Lebanese armed forces, for example, a family in the south, one of their sons might go into the army and the other might join Hezbollah, just to give you an indication of how intertwined the army, the people, and the resistance basically are. And what is interesting, sorry, just quickly about that story, no need to go back, is that Israel actually warned the UNIFIL, the UN forces or peacekeeping units, not to go with the Lebanese army, which is very unusual. And there were Israeli drones overhead during the time that the army were investigating or dismantling the Hezbollah weapons. So speculation here is that Israel had something to do with the attack in order to try and cause division between the army and Hezbollah. Now, I think this is important. I want to look at the options for Lebanon. I know Pat touched on them, but I think in a little bit more detail. So if we have a look at how I've divided it down. So first of all, there is potential, of course, for war in Lebanon against Israel. That has really only simmered to some kind of low intensity. Then, of course, there's the potential for the civil war that is being created by particularly Saudi Arabia, but of course in partnership with Israel and Washington. But I think more importantly, the intention is to actually destroy the Lebanese armed forces or their capability to be a serious defense force in the future, to manufacture a sectarian divide within the army itself, because 55% of the LAF are Shia Muslim, and forcing really the Lebanese army to become nothing more than an internal security force, very poorly weaponized by the US that sponsors them. And of course, then if that were to happen, the civil war scenario, Jolani would potentially exploit the vacuum created to, in inverted commas, protect the Sunni fractions in Lebanon from any of the civil war fallout. And that, of course, would include invasion by his own forces. Now, for Hezbollah, the options are that they can negotiate, that potentially they become a defensive force under the control of the government and the army, which is very similar to what happened in Iraq. And Barak is basically saying, Tom Barak, the US envoy, what he's effectively saying to the Lebanese people, of course, is that we want you to die for Israel. That is being very clearly understood by the majority of people in Lebanon. And again, the latest statement from Tom Barak, the US will fully equip the Lebanese armed forces to help them implement the decision to withdraw weapons. I urge you to freeze that and read it again to understand how utterly ridiculous that is. And finally, we have a video from someone that I think everyone knows, journalist Marwa Osman, who's speaking from her perspective, giving a message to the Lebanese people.
A grave sin that serves Zionist Israel's interests. This is not an exaggeration. It is an accurate reading of a government acting under external diktats and at the expense of Lebanon's security. Listen closely. A parliamentary paper or a cabinet memo cannot dismantle a resistance that is woven into the fabric of our society, nor can it erase the memory of daily raids and airstrikes that have killed and displaced our people. Pro-resistance voices across Lebanon, from the south to the Bekaa to Beirut, have mobilized in the streets, and ministers aligned with resistance factions walked out in a protest during the cabinet session. The ground reality is simple. Legitimacy does not come from decrees. It comes from protecting the people. So what will the resistance do? Expect a sustained campaign of political delegitimization, mass protests, parliamentary pressure, diplomatic appeals to regional partners, and a complete effort to obstruct any implementation that hands our weapons to foreign designs. This is a fight for Lebanon's survival.
I think she said it very clearly there.
Yeah, thank you, Vanessa. Thank you very much for that. Now, let me welcome Mark to the program. Mark,